We need ground attack now. The convoy's pinned down and we're losing people every second. The operations center erupted into chaos. Radio chatter crackled through speakers. Satellite feeds showed smoke billowing from the desert floor, and every face wore the same expression: desperation. Enemy positions had the rescue convoy trapped in a kill zone 20 miles behind contested lines. Standard air support was 20 minutes out. The ground commander's voice cut through again, raw with urgency. They're bracketing our position. We've got wounded. We need someone now or we're writing off 37 souls. Colonel Brock scanned the duty roster, his jaw tightening with each name crossed off. Every capable pilot was wheels up on other missions. Every aircraft committed. His finger stopped on a single entry, and his expression soured. "Get me Vance," he said, voice flat. The aide hesitated. "Sir, she's only qualified on. I know what she's qualified on. Get her here, now." Captain Nora Vance appeared in the doorway 3 minutes later, flight suit already zipped, dark hair pulled back severe and tight. She'd been in the ready room when the call came, running through emergency procedures for the 100th time that week. Not because she needed the practice. Because she needed something to do besides wait for someone to finally let her fly. Brock looked at her like she was a problem he hadn't wanted to solve. "You current on the A-10? "Yes, sir. 300 hours. Top of my qualification class." "That was 18 months ago. You haven't logged combat time, because no one will assign me combat missions, sir." Her voice stayed level, professional. But her eyes held something harder. The radio crackled again. Explosions. Screaming. Someone calling for medics. Brock's face twisted. "The only available aircraft is Reaper 1-3. She's armed, but she's rough. Hydraulics are glitchy. Targeting computer's been acting up. Every qualified hog driver I've got is downrange. I can fly her. This isn't a training exercise, Captain. This is real people dying real deaths if you screw this up." Nora stepped closer to the tactical display, studying the position overlays, the terrain, the enemy concentrations. Her mind was already calculating approach vectors, weapon deployment sequences, egress routes. "With respect, sir, those real people are dying right now while we're having this conversation. I'm qualified. I'm ready. And I'm here." The silence stretched for 3 seconds. 5, 10. Finally, Brock grabbed the radio handset. "Reaper 1-3, you're cleared for immediate launch. Target coordinates transmitting now. You've got 15 minutes to get weapons on that enemy position or we're looking at a massacre." Nora was moving before he finished the sentence. She'd spent 2 years waiting for this moment. 2 years of watching lesser pilots get the call while she was relegated to ferry missions and training flights. 2 years of being technically qualified but practically dismissed. The whispers followed her everywhere. Too cautious, too precise, too by the book. Not aggressive enough. Not hungry enough. Too much thinking. Not enough instinct. None of them understood. None of them had seen what she'd seen. The memory hit her as she ran across the tarmac toward the waiting Warthog. 5 years earlier. Different war. Different desert. She'd been ground crew then, working maintenance on the flight line when the call came in. Wounded transport, pilot fighting to stay conscious, hydraulics failing, fuel streaming from ruptured tanks. She'd watched that pilot bring that dying aircraft home through sheer force of will and technical mastery. Watched him nurse it through an approach that should have been impossible, landing gear that refused to lock, flaps that barely responded. He put it down so gently the wounded in back barely felt the touchdown. She decided that night she would be that good, that precise, that unshakable. Then she'd learned his name, learned his story, learned that he'd been killed 3 months later when his aircraft took a catastrophic hit. And he'd stayed with it an extra 30 seconds that let his wingman escape. 30 seconds that meant he couldn't punch out in time. His daughter had been 7 years old. Nora knew because she'd been at the funeral, standing in the back in her maintenance coveralls, watching them fold the flag. She promised herself then she would fly. She would be that good. And she would never waste a second of it. The A-10 Thunderbolt II squatted on the hard stand like a predator built from titanium and rage. Reaper 1-3 looked exactly like what Brock had described. Rough. Scorch marks from previous missions streaked the armored belly. The canopy had been hastily patched, but the twin engines were already spooling up, the ground crew having prepped her the moment the call came in. Nora did her walk-around in 90 seconds, checking what mattered, trusting what she had to. The Gowade Avenger rotary cannon protruded from the nose like a promise. 7 barrels. 30mm shells, 4,000 rounds per minute. The sound of it firing was often called the Devil's Belch a burr. A burr. Bursa's learned to fear. She climbed the ladder, settled into the cockpit, strapped in with practiced efficiency. Her hands moved through the startup sequence without conscious thought. Fuel pumps, hydraulic pressure, flight controls, weapon systems. The stick felt solid in her right hand. The throttles responded smoothly under her left. Reaper 1-3, tower, you're cleared for immediate departure. Runway 27, wind 260 at 12. Godspeed. Reaper 1-3 rolling. The twin General Electric turbofans pushed her down the runway, and she rotated at exactly the right speed, climbing into air that shimmered with heat and dust. The Warthog wasn't graceful. It wasn't fast. But it was built for exactly this. Low-altitude close air support where precision mattered more than elegance. The targeting data scrolled across her display, 20 miles out. Enemy positions dug into ridgelines overlooking the convoy's position. Anti-aircraft capabilities unknown. Surface-to-air missile threat probable. Standard doctrine said wait for seed suppression of enemy air defenses. Standard doctrine said don't go in alone against an entrenched position without knowing what's shooting back. Standard doctrine was written by people who weren't listening to 37 people die over the radio. Reaper 1-3, Anvil 6, what's your ETA? The ground commander's voice was tight with controlled panic. 8 minutes. I need you to mark your position with colored smoke. Red if you can, anything if you can't. Copy. Be advised we're taking heavy fire from ridge positions north and east. They've got heavy weapons. Probably Zu-23s. We've tried to suppress, but we're pinned down hard. Understood. Keep your heads down. I'm coming in low. She pushed the Warthog down to 500 feet, then 300, skimming the deck where the terrain master approached. The desert rolled beneath her in shades of tan and brown, punctuated by rocky outcrops and dry wadis. Her eyes constantly scanned instruments, horizon, ground, threat displays. The hydraulic warning light flickered. Amber, not red. Not yet. She checked the system pressure. Lower than ideal, but within parameters. The stick felt slightly mushy. Response delayed by maybe a quarter second. Manageable. Everything was manageable if you stayed ahead of it. The smoke appeared ahead. Red, like she'd asked for. The convoy was clustered in a shallow depression, vehicles forming a defensive circle, tiny figures visible in prone positions returning fire. And above them, carved into the ridgelines like malevolent sculptures, the enemy positions. Muzzle flashes sparkled from 3 separate locations. As she watched, an explosion erupted near the convoy. Mortar fire. Nora's mind shifted into a different gear. Time seemed to slow, not because it actually did, but because she was processing faster. Threat assessment. Weapon selection. Approach angle. Altitude. Airspeed. Wind. Every variable locked into place. Anvil 6, Reaper 1-3. I have visual. Beginning attack run. She banked hard, lined up on the northern position, and dropped to 200 feet. The Warthog's armored bathtub around the cockpit was designed to take hits from 23mm rounds. She was about to find out if the designers had been optimistic. The targeting pipper settled on the enemy position. She squeezed the trigger. B. Brard. The sound was primordial, overwhelming, a physical force that shook the airframe. 30mm depleted uranium rounds streamed from the GAU-8 at 6 to 5 rounds per second, each one capable of punching through armor plate. The impact zone erupted in a line of explosions and dust, chunks of rock and equipment spinning into the air. She held the trigger for 2 seconds, exactly as long as she needed, not a fraction longer, then pulled up hard, banking away as tracers stitched the air where she'd been a moment before. The hydraulic warning light went red. Pressure dropping. Backup system engaging. The stick got heavier, requiring more force, fighting her inputs. The Warthog was built with redundancy upon redundancy, but those redundancies were being tested. Good hit. Good hit. Northern position is suppressed. Anvil 6's voice carried desperate hope. Copy. Coming around for eastern position. She should climb. Should gain altitude. Assess the damage. Consider breaking off. The book said so. Safety protocol said so. But the book wasn't watching people die in real time. Nora adjusted her approach, compensating for the degraded flight controls. The eastern position was better defended, dug deeper into the rock. It would take more than a strafing run. She selected Maverick missiles, locked the targeting system on the coordinates. The missile warning tone screamed in her headset. Surface-to-air missile launch. Tracking. Her hands moved without thought. Chaff flares, hard brake right, diving toward the deck. The missile corkscrewed past her, chasing the flares, detonating 200 meters out. The shockwave rocked the Warthog, but the airframe held. Reaper 1-3, you got more SAM sites lighting up. Multiple launches probable. Recommend you break off. Tower control, voice urgent. She ignored them. Pulled the Warthog around, lined up again. The eastern position filled her targeting display. She pickled off a Maverick missile. The AGM-65 dropped from the wing pylon, motor igniting, accelerating ahead of her. It streaked toward the target with perfect precision, guided by her lock. The enemy position disappeared in a fireball that rolled up the ridgeline, secondary explosions erupting as stored ammunition cooked off. Another missile tone. She jinked left, deployed countermeasures, dove so low she could see individual rocks on the desert floor. The missile overshot, couldn't track the hard maneuvering. But the hydraulics were failing faster now. The stick was sluggish, the aircraft responding like it was moving through mud. Warning lights cascaded across the panel, hydraulic pressure critical. Backup system pressure dropping. Flight control degradation. One more position. The mortar emplacement that kept dropping rounds on the convoy. Reaper 1-3, Anvil 6. The mortars are killing us. 3 more wounded. We can't hold much longer. Nora looked at her hydraulic gauges. Looked at the target. Calculated the odds. Made her choice. Anvil 6, stay down. Guns run. Danger close. She came in from the south, using a rocky ridge to mask her approach until the last possible second. The mortar position appeared exactly where the coordinates said it would be. She could see the crew working the tubes, dropping rounds, adjusting for the next shot. The targeting pipper drifted onto target. She squeezed the trigger. BR-RRRRT. The gun roared for 3 full seconds. The mortar position ceased to exist, transformed into a crater ringed with debris. She pulled up, fighting the controls, banking away. The hydraulic failure alarm shrieked. Both systems down. She was on manual reversion, direct mechanical linkage to the flight control surfaces. No power assist. Flying the Warthog like this was like arm wrestling a bear. Reaper 1-3, tower, what's your status? Systems red. Controls degraded. But I'm flying. She pulled the aircraft around, checking the convoy position. No more muzzle flashes from the ridges. No more incoming fire. Anvil 6, Reaper 1-3. Targets neutralized. What's your status? Clear. We're clear. You magnificent crazy, the voice broke off. Composure cracking. Thank you. Thank you. We've got wounded, but we're extracting now. You saved our lives. Copy that. Now get your people home. She pointed the Warthog toward base, 20 miles distant. The aircraft flew like a dump truck with the parking brake on. Every input required full force. Both hands on the stick for maneuvers that should have been simple. Altitude, airspeed, heading. She nursed each one, fighting for every degree, every knot. The hydraulic fluid was gone. She could see it streaming from somewhere underneath, a thin mist trailing behind her. The backup system had lasted longer than it should have, probably held together by prayer and good maintenance. Now it was just her and mechanical cables in an aircraft that didn't want to be flown anymore. Reaper 1-3 tower. Emergency equipment is standing by. We can vector you to a divert field with longer. Negative. I'm bringing her home. Because that's what her father had done. Brought his aircraft home when any sane person would have punched out. She wasn't carrying wounded like he had been, but she was carrying something else. Proof. Proof that she belonged in that cockpit. Proof that skill and precision and absolute refusal to quit mattered more than credentials or politics, or who thought she was aggressive enough. The base appeared on the horizon. She started her approach, calling out her status, hearing the calm professional voices talking her in. But she wasn't really listening to them. She was listening to the aircraft, feeling it through her hands, her whole body attuned to how it wanted to move, where it was fighting her. The landing gear deployed manually. She checked 3 green lights. At least something was working. She came in high and hot because she couldn't afford to be low and slow with degraded controls. The runway rushed up. She flared, pulled back with both hands, felt the main gear touch. Smooth. Solid. The nose wheel came down gentle as a kiss. She deployed the drag chute, stood on the brakes, and brought 60,000 pounds of battle-damaged aircraft to a stop with 500 feet of runway to spare. The emergency crews swarmed the aircraft before she'd even finished the shutdown sequence. She completed it anyway, proper procedure. Every switch in its place, then popped the canopy and climbed out. Her legs were shaking. She hadn't noticed during the flight, but now, standing on the wing, she could feel the adrenaline crash starting. Colonel Brock was there, striding across the tarmac with a knot of officers behind him. His face was unreadable. Nora climbed down, snapped to attention. Aircraft secured, sir. Mission complete. Reaper 1-3 will need extensive hydraulic repairs before. Captain Vance. His voice cut through her report. Do you have any idea what you just did? Sir, I executed the mission as assigned. Neutralized enemy positions threatening friendly forces. All mission objectives. You flew a damaged aircraft into a hot LZ with no support, engaged multiple hardened positions, evaded SAMs, and brought that bird home on manual reversion after complete hydraulic failure. He paused. That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've seen in 30 years. She met his eyes. Steady. It was necessary, sir. Something shifted in his expression. He turned to the officer next to him, an Air Force major whose name tape reads Sterling. Major, you asked me last month who I'd want flying close air support if my own people were in the fire. I've got your answer. Sterling was looking at Nora with open respect. That convoy commander is on the line, sir. Says he won't get off until he talks to the pilot who pulled his people out. Brock gestured to the operations center. Well, Captain, the man wants to thank you. The operations center had transformed since she'd left. The panicked chaos was gone, replaced by focused efficiency. But as Nora walked in, activity stopped, heads turned. And then someone started clapping. It spread. Controllers, coordinators, senior officers. A standing ovation in a military operations center something that never happened, because these were people who dealt in life and death and didn't waste energy on theater. But they were clapping for her. The radio operator held out a handset. Ma'am, Anvil 6. She took it. Reaper 1-3. Captain Vance. The voice was rough, male, carrying the weight of someone who just stared death down and lived. I'm Commander. I need you to understand something. What you did today, we had people who weren't going to make it another 10 minutes. You came in alone, with broken equipment, into fire that should have killed you. And you didn't hesitate. I did my job, sir. No, you did a hell of a lot more than that. 37 people are going home because you were willing to risk everything. Their families are going to see them again. My guys are going to grow old, have kids, live their lives. Because of you. She didn't trust herself to speak. Just nodded, then remembered he couldn't see her. Get your people home safe, Captain. Roger that. And Captain, if I'm ever in the fire again, I want you on my radio. No one else. The handset went back to the operator. She stood there, surrounded by people who hours ago wouldn't have trusted her with a simple transport mission, and realized something had fundamentally changed. Colonel Brock approached, carrying a folder. Your previous performance reviews cited lack of aggression in training scenarios, excessive caution, overthinking tactical situations. He dropped the folder on the nearest desk. I'm recommending those be expunged, along with a commendation for valor and immediate reassignment to primary combat rotation. Sir, you're right, and I was wrong. He said it loud enough for everyone in the operations center to hear. You've been combat ready for 2 years. We should have seen it. I should have seen it. He extended his hand. I'm sorry, Captain. She shook it. Firm. Solid. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Make me look smart for finally pulling my head out. And, Captain, that hydraulic failure maintenance says you should have lost all control authority before you even started your attack run. How the hell did you keep flying? Same way you keep doing anything impossible, sir. You refuse to accept the alternative. 3 weeks later, Reaper 1-3 sat on the flight line, fully restored and then some. The maintenance chief had personally overseen every repair, upgrading systems that didn't need upgrading, making the aircraft better than factory spec. A small inscription had been added below the canopy rail. Vance's redemption. Nora flew combat missions every other day after that. The whispers changed. Now they called her the Ice Queen, the steady hand, the pilot you wanted when everything went wrong. Mission after mission, she brought people home, neutralized targets, made impossible shots. Every single time precise, controlled, deadly effective. 6 months later, a young lieutenant appeared in the ready room, fresh from flight school, clutching her assignment papers with obvious nerves. Ma'am, Captain Vance, they said I should report to you. Nora looked up from her mission planning, saw herself from 5 years ago in that uncertain stance. You qualified on the Hog, Lieutenant? Yes, ma'am. Top of my class. But they said I need more experience before they'll let me. Who told you that? Well, everyone, ma'am. They said I'm too cautious, that I think too much instead of trusting my instincts. Nora smiled. Come with me, Lieutenant. Let me introduce you to an aircraft that doesn't care about instinct. She cares about skill, precision, and absolute refusal to give up. She stood, grabbed her flight helmet. You know what they used to say about me? No, ma'am. Same things they're saying about you. Then one day, they needed someone who could fly broken equipment into impossible situations and bring everyone home alive. She headed for the door, the lieutenant scrambling to follow. Turns out careful and precise beats aggressive and reckless every single time when it matters. Come on, let's see what you've got. Behind them, on the operations board, a new protocol had been quietly implemented. A note in the mission planner's handwriting, approved by Colonel Brock himself. For rescue ops behind enemy lines, request Vance. She'll get them home. The afternoon sun glinted off Reaper 1-3's canopy as 2 figures walked toward it across the scorched concrete. One learning, one teaching. Both carrying the knowledge that skill earned through dedication would always matter more than credentials granted by committee. The Warthog waited, patient and deadly, ready for whatever came next. If you have enjoyed the story, tell YouTube to send you more stories like this by subscribing to this channel, liking the video, and leaving a comment.